folks, Ariel over here at Finest. Here today I just wanted to do a quick video of one of my absolute favorite soups. This is good year-round, but I really love this when the weather is cold. And yes, it is actually cold and snowing outside, but in here it is very warm, thanks to my lovely little wood stove. So what I've just dumped in there is bone broth. This was either chicken or turkey, I forget, I didn't label it. It's dark enough, it's probably turkey. Just gonna rinse out the containers. This is kind of what has evolved over the years from the fact that I really love ramen. The cheap, completely nutritionless, you know, little packs that you can get. Well, they used to be like 10 cents. I think they're more than that now, if you buy a whole case of ramen. I've just always loved that. For me, I know different people like different kinds of comfort food, but for me, comfort food is noodles and broth, basically. That's just what I really enjoy. But because that stuff is pretty much nutritionless and even full of some probably potentially harmful things, I have experimented over the years with making kind of my own version. And there are lots of different you know, variations on this, but this is one of my favorites. So I'm starting with real broth there instead of, you know, just water. And you could do water and bouillon. There's different qualities of bouillon, and there are some decent ones out there. But if you have or can make or can get real broth, that is going to be much more nutritious, because broth has all kinds of things in it, you know, that basically leach out of the bones, like collagen and gelatin and all kinds of minerals and so on. So the broth is melting in there. As you know, I very much like garlic, so I put a bunch of garlic in here. And you could dice this or crush this up really small, but for a soup like this, I don't mind it being a little bigger, so I'm going to slice this in here. Cut that in half and then just do little slices. And I'm putting this in first just because I want some time for this to cook into the surrounding broth. You could, of course, do no garlic or less garlic if you do not enjoy it quite as much as I do. But I'm just going to slice my garlic cloves in here. There we go. This is also a really quick meal, and I usually make a pot big enough that I can have leftovers for there's the half hour, that I can have leftovers for another meal. These cloves are actually pretty big. This is not garlic that I grew. As you probably know, my little gophers ate all of mine last year, but there's a lot planted out there under the snow, so hopefully when it all finally melts this spring, well, I don't harvest it in the spring, of course, but hopefully when it all melts this spring, there will be plenty of yummy garlic growing, and I will have a good crop this year, which would be perfect. Those are pretty big, so I might actually skip that clove and keep him for later. Now, I like to put some seasoning in. I don't like things very spicy, but I like just a little bit of red pepper flakes. Not a whole lot there. Gives a little bit of a kick to it. This soup is also, I feel fine, but if you have a cold or something, this is good with the broth and the steam and a little bit of red pepper. That'll really get your mucus flowing and help open things up if you have a cold. This is kale. Not kale. Try that again. This is kelp. I like to use a little bit of seaweed in a lot of things just because of its nutritional value, so I just do a little handful of dried kelp in most soups that I make. I don't really notice the flavor at all, but there are so many delicious things in sea vegetables that I just don't really get from anything that would grow in my part of the world. So I do try to put seaweed in various things. My broth is melting there. I've got peppers and seaweed in there. And then the main bulk of this dish is actually mushrooms. You could just do the broth by itself if you wanted, but I love mushrooms and they give such a delicious, rich flavor. I've got several varieties here. This is like a trumpet mushroom. You could, of course, do this with just plain white button mushrooms, which is what one of the grocery stores here in the area usually has, and the other one occasionally has some of these other varieties. And so when they do, I like to get them because mushrooms are one of the more nutritionally dense foods that you can eat. They're a fungus, of course, and so they are not in the plant family. They're actually, if you look at how they grow and live in their DNA and such, they actually are more like an animal than a plant. And they're very high in protein and vitamin K and all kinds of other nutrients. That one's a shiitake mushroom, kind of the flat cap and the little stem. I just like the combo of flavors. You could do this with absolutely any kind of mushrooms you like. I'm just slicing them in here. And I've got some of these cool, funny little guys. I'm not sure what this brown variety is. I'm sure somebody's going to ask me about wild mushrooms here. Of course, there's not really any to get to easily with the amount of snow that's on the ground out there at the moment, but there are several varieties of wild mushrooms that grow here that are edible, but they're not around at this time of year, so I do buy mushrooms at a grocery store. I'm thinking this summer I would really enjoy getting some edible mushrooms, see if I can get a log or two worth of them or a patch growing here for my own harvest. That would be fun. That's something I have never done, but that I would like to do. There's just another regular little button mushroom. And different mushrooms have different, kind of like I talked about it with the planting different varieties of seeds and so on. Here's a little tall, skinny, white kind. Again, I'm not sure what that one's called. You know, with planting all kinds of different things, the more variety you can get into your diet, generally it seems the more beneficial that is, as long as the variety is real foods, not drink every different kind of soda pop that there is. But there's just different little amounts of different micronutrients in most different plants, and so the wider variety you eat generally seems to be correlated with better health and nutrition. So that's why I like to do this variety. But if I just have the little white button mushrooms, I enjoy the taste of this soup with just them as well. And I'm just making these into chunks that you can, you know, eat in a soup with a spoon. You could leave the mushrooms bigger if you liked, but I like them a little bit smaller. Stir them down into the broth there. Get a few more in this pot. And just if you didn't have bone broth, just the mushrooms in water, actually, if you give it a bit of a time to simmer, will make a pretty rich tasting broth as well. So you could go that route if you don't have a good broth. But I just like it being really rich and thick. So I do both. A few more of these in here. Sorry for the lack of cooking videos for the last while. It's just been so snowy this year, and I have spent most daylight hours outside shoveling, and then I come in and make something to eat. I'm still eating, of course, but for one, I'm tired, and it does take longer to make things when you set up cameras, but two, it is fairly dark at that point, because in December and January the sun sets here at like 4 in the afternoon, and it's just I actually filmed a couple things and just was not happy with how dark the video quality was in here. I mean, it's plenty light enough to see, but cameras always need more light than your eyeballs, and so I just was unhappy with the quality and just deleted them. So the days are slowly getting longer, and that is nice. So anyway, there's daylight right now. Plus it's only snowing a little bit, and it was like below zero the last few days, and it doesn't usually snow then, so got a tiny bit of a gap in the snowstorm. I think the next 2 days are supposed to be pretty snowy again. So, getting that hot, I can feel the steam coming off of it. I want that to simmer for a bit. I am going to add a little bit of salt. This is a Celtic Gray. Use any kind of unrefined real salt. Probably won't look white. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that. And the reason I'm not doing any more salt than that is because I'm going to add some miso once this is done simmering. You don't want to cook your miso too long. It kind of kills some of the good buggies that are in there because it's a fermented product. And no, I don't make my own, though that would be fun. I never have done so. But we're going to just let this simmer together. And now that's going to be so rich with the broth and the mushrooms that I am going to thin it down with just a little bit of water. I have good well water here that is what I fill my tank with, so that's why I don't filter my water. If I was still on city water, I would, but that's a good clean water. And now we're just going to put a lid on that and let that simmer for a bit, and then we'll check back once that's had time to bubble together for a while. Just going to let this continue simmering there because I want a lot of the goodness to kind of soak out of those mushrooms. Okay, this has been simmering for like 10 minutes or so. Just enough to get those mushrooms to all soften up and leach out their yumminess. Now, I'm going to do a few other things. You could do this with just mushrooms and broth. I do that sometimes. I also like these really thin rice noodles. Back to kind of having like an original ramen-y textured soup. You can probably find these in the Asian section of your grocery store. So I just like to put a few of them in there, and they will cook. They don't generally need, 10 minutes or 6 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever like most wheat pastas. They do need a little time to soften up, but you could even just turn it off and let the heat from the hot broth soak in there. Then the other thing I like to do, which is totally optional, is add a little extra gelatin. There is gelatin in there because of the, you're going to sprinkle it in just a little bit slowly, or it'll try to make a clump as it soaks into the hot broth. There is gelatin in there from the bone broth, but I like adding just a little more. It makes it just really rich and creamy and a little bit of a thicker texture on your tongue. And gelatin's good for all kinds of things in your body, like your joints and your skin and your hair and nails and all of that stuff. So yeah, let those get soft, which will take just a minute. And now I am going to actually turn the heat off and add my miso. If you're not familiar with miso, it's fermented soybean paste. These lids are so difficult to get off sometimes. And I just like to take a little bit of it like that. And this is a white miso. There's a red miso and so on. They're just different fermented varieties. So that'll take a minute to dissolve in there, and the noodles will be getting soft. And then I'm going to sit down and eat. So you could do, of course, lots of variations on that, put different things in it. You could do just broth and noodles. You could just do broth and mushrooms. I really like both. And you can put whatever else you liked in there. But that's a quick way. It takes me like 10, 12 minutes, and most of that I can be doing other things while it's just simmering, to make a little pot of soup that will last me for a couple meals. Maybe that gives you guys some ideas. What's your favorite brothy, noodly soups? Or what's your favorite comfort food? For me, it is brothy, noodly soups. Okay, here we go. Look how yummy and rich that looks. And I am going to sit down and have a delicious bowl of soup. Probably with some sprouts on the side, because I've always got more of these growing by the window, and these guys are plenty big enough to eat now. So that's going to be my lunch. Hi folks, Ariel over here. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time watching these videos. Hopefully you found something beautiful, educational, interesting, peaceful, relaxing, or useful while you were here. If so, find more videos here, subscribe so you don't miss any updates, and if you like what you found here, feel free to like and share away so that others can benefit as well. You all have a wonderful day.